Crafted and Creative, a podcast meant to uplift and engage BIPOC creatives who are on their journey of making a social impact and creating a lasting legacy. The show's mission is to create community and a sense of guidance for those that are looking to do the same through their artistry. Today's guest is change agent and business owner Maria Taylor. Maria is CEO of the media company Crashing Waves Pictures and the nonprofit organization Creative Media Group. Maria has over 15 years of experience as a filmmaker and industry professional. She teaches the technical side of cinematography and is one of the very few women of color with the title cinematographer. Her work throughout media reflects the narrative on how we do business behind the lens and empowering content creators from BIPOC and LGBTQ plus communities. And lastly, I have the pleasure of calling her mentor. So I'm so excited and so happy you agreed to do this. I've been secretly calculating. I'm like, I have to sit down and interview her and really get into it. So thank you, Maria, for joining me.
Thank you so much. Wow. It's funny because it's very seldom that you hear your own bio like read out loud. So I was like, that I did all that. That's a lot. Thank you. That's great info. I appreciate it.
No problem, no problem. So, what got you into being a filmmaker, being this multi-hyphenate artist we know today?
Wow. I actually started as a producer and producing my own content and as an actor working in various projects. And I realized that the narrative is driven by the person with the camera and driven by the person who wrote the piece. And I really felt like that was important to see us in that space. And I wanted to be intentional on creating stories that I felt like represented us in a real way. And there was this quote that I heard that resonated so deeply. It said, "Nothing about us without us." Right. And I was like, that resonated with me because so many times we hear stories or see stories that are told by people that, don't look like us. And I felt like representation was really important. So I shifted my efforts into, producing content and then understanding the technical side of filmmaking and camera operations.
hmm Was there a particular project that pivot moment happened for you? You know, when you were producing and you were acting, was there like a particular moment that you're like, no, I absolutely have to be a part of this change?
It was kind of just gradual because I realized that more and more, the more sets that I was on, the more I started to realize, we didn't see ourselves in that space on the other side of the lens. So for me, I really wanted to shift from waiting for someone to choose me to choosing myself and
Mm,
creating the projects that I wanted to be in and taking more ownership of that. So, as an actor, when I started as an actor, I was waiting for the phone to ring. And I said, well, I don't want to do that. And then I realized that the budget doesn't come through the actors, it comes through the production company and the media house. So my travel show is what I started with. It was called What's New with Maria Taylor. And I kind of wanted to be like a travel guru, but create my own narrative and do my own thing. And I was specific about my shots and how I wanted that to look. So I just started being proactive and producing that show and, finding the restaurants that I wanted to go to or the festivals and, figuring out who those people were. And this was before LinkedIn, y'all. So, like you next gen folks have it real easy with this internet. You could find and get to whoever you want to get to. But I had to do it old
hmm
school, like literally just pick up the phone and or figure out a way to get to what I needed to get to. But it made me really tactful and resilient and appreciative of the process.
hmm Now, going, like you said, you things were different back then. Were you like going to these events and like pitching yourself? Did you feel like you had to create a certain brand around yourself to get people to buy into what you were trying to create?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll say this, and this really applies to, I think, a multitude of businesses. You need to create the thing that you want people to see or buy into. So for me, I wanted to go to all of these festivals, like food festivals. I'm a big foodie. I'm like, I need to eat all the small bites. So, but I can't just shoot my shot without having some sort of proof of concept, right? The content to show you that I can do the thing that I'm selling. So
hmm
I shot it myself. I had some friends that owned a restaurant in Midtown, and one of my buddies that I went to acting class with was actually a director, and he had a camera. And I said, "Listen, I don't have no money, so well, we can go over here,
Mm-hmm.
eat some food, and I just need you to record this content for me, and I'll figure out how to edit." And we just did like a barter. And I shot the piece, and it was okay. The audio
Mm-hmm.
was a little crazy, the lighting was a little crazy, but I was able to deliver some sort of thing, a tangible thing that they could look at. And I got my first festival, which was a food and wine festival in New York, and then I said, now that because don't open the door for me, I'm gonna go up all up in there. And I was in there and I was interviewing chefs, and then that got me the next one and the next one and the next one.
Wow. Wow. That's so crazy. You really do just have to kind of start, where it's like, I don't have nobody. I'm just going to, log into Zoom. If you're able to log in, I would love it. Um, with that, how did that go from like creating your projects to now doing branded content and what?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
so that became just kind of a natural transgression for me because I always wanted to work with the brands because I realized the brands have the budgets and they have the big dollars. I mean, you see McDonald's everywhere, you see their
Hmm.
commercials everywhere. And then I started to understand the advertising and the marketing dollars that are allocated to those brands each quarter. So each quarter, a brand has a certain amount of money that they're going to spend on advertising to us, the consumers, and then marketing whatever that advertising asset is, whether it's a commercial or photography or a billboard or whatever. They put money behind that because they need people to buy their stuff. So I realized that if I am the content creator or the producer, I can figure out how to tap in to those markets and build those relationships and produce that content for those brands. And really just, not being like a creep about it, but
Hmm.
investigate.
Hmm.
You gotta dig around and find out who those contacts are and who those people are, and get very intentional and very deliberate on sourcing that information.
Hmm. Mm. Now, when you're working with branded content, it is different from the storytelling that you would do with a narrative project or a documentary or a lifestyle show. What is like the first thing you kind of look at to try to figure out how to hook the audience in or how to essentially sell this product?
Well, the good thing about branded content is that the brand tells you exactly what they want, and they're very specific on what works for them. So they have collected data and metrics on, say, McDonald's has the best fries. We know this because, all of our East Coast markets, every time somebody orders number one, it comes with fries. They know what makes their fries the best, and they have people for that. So we start with what's called a client brief. And this is basically a document that has all of this data on there and what they would like the consumer to know about their fries. They're
Hmm.
hot, amazing, and delicious. You can get it in 30 seconds. So that gives us kind of a roadmap and a blueprint. And then we, as the creatives and the production company, have to turn those words into something really powerful and fun to look at. And we do
Hmm.
that by having conversations on, what that asset will look like. And we get feedback through our discovery call. So we go through kind of like a back and forth think tank on what that commercial piece would look like.
Mm-mm. And how do you feel like you can maintain some type of creative control in that, because you are working with data, you are working with large brands, and like you said, they know their product, they're studying their audiences. So how do you feel like you could fit your voice and your mark into giving them their product?
You do it gently, very gently, because it's their baby, right? It's
Hmm.
their fries, it's their brand, and you really are a creative vendor, work for hire, and you want to make sure that you're easy to work with, right? So you don't want to be, too assertive with your ideas because you want to make sure that you can work well with others. That's how you get asked back to the table and realize that it is a community, it is a cipher. So, I'm not going to go up against McDonald's and tell them that, you know what, I don't think we should highlight the fries. We should talk about that six-piece chicken nugget.
Mm.
Cancel. So you have to
Hmm.
be able to absorb what it is that they need and then put it back in a space that is fresh and creative and looks good on camera.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's the thing too when I was studying with the one school with marketing, trying to figure out how to still be creative and still feel like I can create this thing for this brand, especially Black voices and like Black or brands in general love to use like Black culture essentially to reach younger audiences. Did you ever feel a time where you felt like you conflicted working with the brand or you know, utilizing something from the culture to like help sell this thing? Because I know there's a lot of like artist responsibility that sometimes we might feel when creating something.
Yeah, I think as long as you're true to the culture, that is important. And who better to know that than us, right? So,
Hmm.
sometimes the brands are removed from the culture because they operate in different space. You're talking about, C-suite executives that aren't, in the places and spaces that we're in. It's funny because I'm going to be hosting a conference with a group of high school students on branded content. And I had to make sure that I can speak their language. So I had to go on Google Chat and say, what is it that y'all talk about? Like, what's your verbiage? And they were saying all kinds of mid and 6 7 and all that.
I
So
still don't know
yeah,
what that means. Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
even know what that means.
yeah. Yeah.
I'm a woman of a certain age, so I don't know, but I had to make sure that I did my homework, right? So you want to gently suggest to brands like this is actually what we do and this is actually what we say, but also, make sure that you're respectful of what their narrative needs to be for their
Mhm.
sales and marketing.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely a balance because
Yeah.
it's true that, Black culture is American culture. We do consume, we do buy things, and it's important for us to also be represented. Aside from that, when you are actually on the day shooting and things happen, sometimes maybe the camera might not be working and people are stressed. How do you like to lead your sets, in terms of like dealing with the high pressure?
For us, we are as prepared as possible. Pre-production, pre-production, pre-production. Get it all the way together before you get to set. Because when you get to set, it's showtime. We like to do a lot of test shots. We like to do a lot of audio and sound check. We'll probably go on to the set or on to the location before we get there because it's like an event. It's like a wedding. You only get one shot at that, and especially when people are giving you their dollars, you want to make sure you are as ready as possible. But we're at the point now where we know what to do because we're specialists. So all that trial and error stuff happened, back like when I told you when I shot that thing when I was 20, and the lighting and the audio was messed. But that really comes from being hands on and then taking the time on your own to do your own passion projects too. And you can mess that up because nobody gave you money for that. That's just what you
Mhm.
love. So when you get to something that, somebody has commissioned you for, you know what you're doing because you've been working and rehearsing on your own.
That's true. It comes with the growth. Sometimes I feel like, oh man, will it ever get better? Even working with this podcast, things are always going wrong on the day of, but I have to be patient because growth does happen. Now, how do you apply that with teaching the youth? You do a lot of work with high school students that are interested in film. How do you translate maintaining artistic integrity with working with branded content as a beginner?
How do I maintain artistic integrity? Um, you know, you don't want to do anything that you don't feel good about, but I've never thankfully been in a situation like that. I think just continuing to make sure you have a dialogue with all parties, and making sure everybody feels good about it. But that happens way in advance with your storyboarding and your script or the client brief as we discussed. So by the time you get on set, you know what it is that you're doing. But I will say that there are three projects. There is the project you conceptualized in your brain and storyboarded for and wrote. There's a project that you can actually execute with the limitations of maybe talent or locations that you couldn't get into or the rain or the whatever. And then there's the piece that gets chopped up on the editing floor. that
Mhm.
can be a different project too. So I think being able to adjust through all of those different stages is something that is very helpful in the long run.
Mhm.
And as far as our young people are concerned, we bring them through all of those stages, right?
Mhm.
We make sure that they're right there with us as production assistants or storyboarding or bring them in on the edit so they can see that all of these different variables can happen at any given moment, and you just have to make sure you're able to pivot and adjust.
Mhm. And with that, you say you're taking them through the different phases of filmmaking and creating a project. Your students have gone on to work with, big brands like NBC Universal and different studios. Are there other qualities you feel like you have to give them in order to be industry ready?
um experience, really, and it's just hands-on real world experience, and congratulations to you, because shooting this podcast means you have taken ownership of what it is that you want to do, and then you'll learn through this process what that entails. So by the time you're booked on Sirius or whatever, let's manifest greatness,
Hmm.
whatever
Hmm.
your landing is, you're ready to go because you wore all of the hats and you've done all the things, and you've just the levels and your lighting and so our young people are able to get into those spaces because they have real world experience. And in my opinion, that's the only way.
Mm-hmm. And since everything is changing, we mentioned this earlier, like with all the TikToks and all the like new, slang, everything's changing. And there's, filmmaking is changing because we have verticals now, we have all this other stuff is happening. Do you feel like there's an essential quality of filmmaking that someone that's new to it should be able to maintain on top of all the other elements?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love all of the different ways in which creatives are putting out content, but the fundamentals are the same, right? Like your audio has to be clear, your lighting has to be fantastic. If you can get, a 3-point lighting set up, like right now, I can see, you have your key light coming from wherever you're sitting in front of your window or whatever. You want a motivated light, and then you want a backlight. Say, like here, for example, in this hallway space, if you had some light coming up through there, you'd be like, oh, this is a hallway. And if you could do a contrast lighting. So what I like to do also here on your iPhone, on the color wheel, I'll show you that
Hmm.
right here.
Oh. Hmm.
That is, how you alternate your color. So for example, if you're wearing blue, I'd like to see more orange in the space. Or if
Hmm.
you're wearing yellow, I like to see more purple in the space, right?
Hmm.
So the color wheel will help you offset and be creative with your coloring. And then I also just like to make sure I'm as polished as possible, and whomever else is on the set or in the shot is as polished as possible. So those three, there's probably a few more things, but those are like the core fundamentals for whatever it is you're shooting. It's funny because a friend of mine started shooting more content on her own, and it looked great. Everything was great.
Mm.
Audio. I said, "Where's your mic?" I can't
Mm.
hear you all the way back there. So
Yeah.
those key fundamental things are what you need for whatever sort of content you're going to put out.
Hmm. Do you feel like there's any like beginner mistakes you see when especially you're doing these workshops, you're having people come in? What's the most common mistake or thing that you're seeing with students?
I will say audio for sure, and lighting for sure, and also framing, composition. For example, I'm sitting here in my bedroom. These things are not ideal, but I'm in my house today. But like when I first sat down at the computer, I had this going on, and oh, and my ceiling fan. Like I wouldn't want to take a call, like this. So
Hmm.
even those small little framing adjustments
Mm.
that look a little bit better. So, try to line up your framing, your composition as best as you can, get your lighting as best as you can, get your audio as best as you can. That's how you can kind of tell like the novice from the specialist.
Mm. And how important for you has been collaboration, working with others on projects in addition to teaching, but also working with your partner and working with other people. How important has that been for you as a filmmaker?
For me, collaboration is key. I am a big believer in the term relationships are currency. I think it's really, really important to nurture and maintain relationships, especially as an artist, as a creative, um, because you will find that it is more challenging to go at it as a party of one. So for us, we are very intentional about cultivating relationships with, like-minded individuals or organizations that have similar alignment, and it's just like, your group of friends, right? It's like, hey, we want to hang out and do the same thing. You want to do that with people that understand you and you understand them. And in exchange, you care about the same thing, and then it's
Mm-hmm.
more fun too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree. I'm happy I could be in spaces to like network with you and learn from you and be able to like create things like this. And so what has been your favorite project or brand to work on so far?
Oh, oh man, we're blessed to have been able to work on some really incredible projects. I will say my favorite so far, and we have some exciting things coming up for 2026, was our summit in London. And this is also the power of manifestation and really, really doing whatever it is. You got to be mindful of what you tell your brain. Because if you tell your brain that you can do it and you really focus on that, you can absolutely do it. I was saying to myself, I would love to take our program overseas and do more things on a global scale. And sorry, I got to charge my
Mhm.
computer. But where do I begin? I begin where I have relationships. So we had relationships in London, and we reached out to a community partner there, similar organization to ours. What they do is they support young people that are seeking asylum through the arts. And these young people come from all over the country. They come from Kyrgyzstan and Saudi and Singapore, and they are a creative collective of young people that are artists. And I reached out to their executive director and I said, we want to shoot a commercial in the UK and we want to onboard maybe 5 to 10 of your young people to support us as production assistants on the shoot. And we'll figure out who the brand, the client is going to be. And then it turned out that we shot the piece in Brixton. And Brixton is this really cool, like swaggy neighborhood in London, in central London. It's giving like Williamsburg vibes
Mm,
or like Wynwood vibes. It's like where the artists and the cool kids hang out. And actually, we went out this time when we said, let's kind of flip it and not be so structured. Let's let our young people decide what this piece should be. It's got to be 2 minutes, but here we are in the middle of Brixton. What should we talk about? And they're like, why don't we talk about the culture of Brixton
mm,
and all of these artists? And, there are stalls of people, drinking tea from Morocco and artists like, painting mural art and eating, little rotis. And it's just like a super vibe. So my partner and I said, okay, well, let's find 3 people to talk to about why they love Brixton.
mm,
And that's your assignment. So you've got 15 minutes. Just go
mm,
out, get the people. So this one gentleman he was selling juice, but not just any juice. It was like ginger, refreshing. He was like into wellness, and he's like chewing on a sugar cane, like true Rasta. But he was passionate about what he did. So we interviewed him, and he talked about his passion for his brand. The second woman had a tea shop, and she was talking about her tea and why tea is like wellness for her, and
mm,
she uses it instead of medicine. And then there was a third person there, and he was into like fashion and culture.
mm,
So it came together so beautifully because it was from the young people that had the foresight to say, we want to choose people that are engaging and are interesting and have like a special thing to them. And they naturally went and they shot the piece. So after we shot the piece, came together beautifully because all of the colors and all of that creatively looked really well. We screened it at the Soho House. Soho House has a few locations in London, and then they got to come to the
wow.
screening. And you're talking about young people that have left their country for very very traumatic reasons, and now they're coming to a place where they get to get dressed up
Mm,
they get to invite their friends, and they feel proud of their work. And it was actually very emotional because, they came and they're like, wow, this is amazing and so beautiful and fancy. And people are here to see something that I made, that I
Mm.
did, and that I'm proud of. And then we got, some behind the scenes shots and talked to them about why the project was so important. So that for me was, one of the most fun projects because, it wasn't about me, it wasn't about our organization, it was about them. And it was about just providing a platform for them to shine. And that was just super dope.
That's amazing. And I used to teach, and as someone that loves teaching, it's amazing when you see someone find their passion in real time or be passionate about something and being able to share it. Is there a piece of advice that you would want to leave someone with, a young filmmaker, someone that's interested in working with brands and building a branded content business?
Yeah, I would say get specific and set your short-term goals and your long-term goals. I mentor a bunch of young people from all over the country, and that's the first thing I say. I said, long-term, what is it that you want to do? And then short-term, what can we do to kind of help get you there? So be specific, but also be intentional and show up for yourself. So I can only do so much, by mentoring you and helping to guide you and give you suggestions, but you also have to show up for yourself. So I'm so proud of you, Deja, for showing up for yourself and this amazing platform that you've created. Just kudos to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, what's next for you? Any other workshops coming up? Any other film projects?
Yeah, yeah. So we're really excited. We're actually shooting a narrative piece here in Miami that we go into principal photography next week. We're really excited about our youth summit and to partner with some local brands in New York, some brand partners, and just continuing to onboard our young people who are super, super talented. We're doing more things on an international scale now. So we've put, some core markets on our radar, like Japan and back to London.
Mm,
Maybe we can do some things in Barcelona. So I'll say this, dream big. Whatever it is that you want to do as an artist, sky is absolutely the limit. Go all the way with it. But like I said, be intentional, be deliberate, and be specific.
wonderful. And where can people find you?
Well, you can find me wherever you no. You can find me online. Yeah, Creative Media Group. That's our Instagram, and we are creativemedia.org.
Amazing. Thank you again, Maria. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you guys for watching this episode of Crafted and Creative, and I will see you in the next episode.